Welcome to the PIO Podcast, a place for everything public information related for police, fire, EMS, and local governments.
It was a good learning experience for a lot of us that social media is not real life.
But we have to remember the media are very rarely a target audience. They're simply that conduit.
Our words have impacts on individuals, and it may not be positive. So just being thoughtful and mindful of the words that we speak.
I think what's so interesting about this position too, and this job and this profession, is that every one of us is looking for purpose, and when we find it here, that's it.
To know is that a crisis for one is not necessarily a crisis for another.
Hello everyone, hope you're enjoying our content. If you would be so kind and click the link at the bottom of today's episode notes, your support in any amount will keep the podcast going. Whatever you can provide will keep the lights on and the podcast growing. So sit back and enjoy today's episode.
Good morning. Today on the PIO podcast, we want to welcome Captain John Vik. He's from Lancaster County Sheriff's Office in Lancaster, Nebraska. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Robert, for having me. I appreciate being here.
Yes, sir. I appreciate this. Finding somebody else that does a podcast is always fun. And when it's a agency podcast, it's even better. But I want to know your background first before we jump into the meat of the potatoes of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I said, John Vik and I, we're in Lincoln, Nebraska. So it's Lincoln, Nebraska, and Lancaster County. So around the Civil War era, they had some switcheroo with the names. It used to be Lancaster many years ago, but we're Lincoln now. So I'm a hometown kid. I graduated from high school in Lancaster County here, and I guess I always had an interest in law enforcement. I think everybody kind of has a list of what they want to be when they grow up, but being a cop was always something that I was interested in. I had some friends in law enforcement growing up, things like that. So I actually joined the military in July of 2001 and was in the Air National Guard here in Nebraska, and joined a Security Forces unit, which is military police for the Air Force. And then September 11th happened, and we all know what where that took the world. So I was on active duty, activated for a little bit after that. So that's kind of my start in law enforcement, although it was much different than how law enforcement looks for me today. But then I was able to finish college, went to the University of Nebraska, got a psychology degree here in Lincoln. And then I came to the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office right after that. So it started here and hasn't ended here yet, but this is where I'm at today. So,
are you a Cornhusker? Is that correct in Nebraska?
Yes, that's nice. That's the hometown mascot. So yes, I am an alum.
Nice, very nice. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about demographic information for Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. How many professional staff, and what's the population?
Yeah, so Lancaster County is about 325,000 people total. About 295,000 are within the city of Lincoln itself. So our county population outside the city of Lincoln, around 30,000. And, it'll kind of go up and it'll go down. We'll get, some population increases for our patrol area specifically. Then the city will annex some. And so we kind of have this trade-off with the city of Lincoln as our population goes. But our staff, we're unique, at least, from some of my counterparts across the Midwest and the rest of the country. As a sheriff's office, we actually don't manage our jail. So we have a separate Department of Corrections here. So our sheriff's office is a little bit smaller than what maybe a sheriff's office would be for that population elsewhere in the country. So we've got about 85 sworn as far as deputies, and they're spread out through several different divisions here. I command our patrol division. But a lot of that is also for our court security that we do provide security for the courthouse and things like that. Then we got about 25 professional support staff that are here at the office doing a whole variety of tasks, including a civilian PIO that we're looking to add at some point this fall. So that's something that's in the mix that we're looking to do on a full-time basis. And then we've got a mix of kind of sworn and non-sworn security guards that also supplement security here at the courthouse. So about 125 employees total, and we're always looking for good people.
And would you say you're fully staffed, or?
We're down a little bit right now, and that's fluctuated as well. The high water mark was about 10% that we were down, but we're back up a little bit. And as you know, Robert, it even when you're full on paper, you're never really full in reality, because you've got people that are in the training pipeline and people that have injuries and all those sorts of things. So it's always a balance, and be a captain. They said it'll be fun. They said that's something that I juggle every day, trying to figure out. We had a predecessor of mine that said, this isn't hinky dinky. We can't just call up another checker from the back. And man, that's true. In all the positions that we have, it's just so vital to have good people. Absolutely.
All right, so let's talk about your podcast. Captain, you are the voice of the 902 podcast for the Sheriff's Office.
Yep.
Where did the idea come from, and when was it implemented?
Yeah, so I had the good fortune to go to the FBI National Academy back in 2022. I was a graduate of session 284. And I've listened to some of your episodes. Shane Foley, you had back in season 3 at Indianapolis PD, was a classmate of mine. So he and I exchanged some text messages before coming on your show. So that's kind of where this idea came to me, at least. I'd listened to podcasts before, all different types, leadership, just the other stuff. And I think Out There was the first time I was in a communications class with Cynthia Lewis and Mari Shine. And we got exposed to the idea of what a podcast could look like for communicating in law enforcement. And through that class, some exposure, talking with some other friends, there's a really good Sheriff's Office podcast out of Broward County, Florida, that some people in my group use. A good friend of mine down in Broward County. And that was kind of what planted the seed in my mind that, hey, this is maybe something that we could do. And that's really where the idea, you come out of the National Academy with all sorts of ideas, but this was one goal that we wanted to bring back and see if we could kind of plug into our overall plans and mission at the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office.
Okay. My questions I put my questions in the wrong order, so I'm going to jump over one.
Yeah.
Let's discuss the format of the podcast. And I haven't heard it yet. And the reason I haven't heard it yet is because I have so many projects going on. It's nuts. Is it audio only, or are you doing video as well?
So right now it's audio only, and we're recording this on Riverside right now, right? So so Riverside provides some additional opportunities to be able to do video podcasts. Video podcasts have been around for a while, but I think through Spotify and Riverside, it's opened up some additional opportunities for people to do that. When we started, we were on Spotify for podcasters, and there weren't a ton of, at least really user-friendly options to get video up and off the ground. But that's something that we're looking at now, and we are using the Riverside studio to at least do some of our editing and things. So video is something that's kind of on the horizon for us. It's something that's in the lab, so to speak, that we're working through, but we haven't got any video episodes up yet. So
it's small steps. I mean, I didn't start with video either until I found Riverside, because I was doing Buzzsprouts specifically, and that's what I usually do all my editing in the audio. But
okay, yeah.
Now that I've started using video more, I actually do it through Premiere Pro, is where I edit it.
Okay, all right.
But go ahead.
Yeah, we're talking. We're nerding out now on podcast platforms. That's awesome. So, we started on Spotify, and that's where we primarily did our editing stuff. Unfortunately, Spotify got rid of a lot of their in-house editing stuff and farmed it out to Riverside. I'm kind of reserving judgment yet, because it's just new, and so I'm not quite as quick as I maybe was doing all the editing with Spotify. But there are certainly some extra features that we're looking to do. But as far as format for our shows, I mean, we're trying to just tie everything back to public safety in Lancaster County, and so we'll have episodes with guests. We'll have some episodes just in house. I've even done a couple monologue episodes. It really depends. We just try and shake things up, but we're trying to just essentially have that kind of cup of coffee conversation with our constituents, with people that are citizens, taxpayers in Lancaster County. So they get a little bit of a look behind the curtain, so to speak, on why we do what we do and how we do it. And I think that's just part of our broader, transparency, public trust mission throughout all of public safety.
And what kind of length does it run?
Yeah, so we're anywhere from a half hour to an hour for an episode. And that was kind of intentional. Different communities throughout the country, we tried to keep ours at least within like a day's commute. So a lot of people listen to these in the car, and so average commute for us in town is anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes round trip. And so we tried to kind of keep it in that in that bite size format so that people could listen to it. We release on usually if we're keeping up on things on a weekly basis, and so. People can usually, catch one of our episodes once a week and still have time to listen to their other stuff. But we've had some true crime episodes on case studies and things that have gone a little bit over that. So, we don't get too nervous about the time clock, but that's usually what we're shooting for.
It's always good to have a kind of a goal because at least it helps you keep the timing right. I mean, if you just wander, it gets lost after a while.
You can get lost in the woods real quick.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to really geek out now.
Go.
What kind of equipment did you start out with?
Yeah, so I did a little bit of research, in my class, but then did some other research when the research is different when you actually have to spend the money on it, right? Mm-hmm. So when we started looking, I was really looking for just kind of a kit, something that could get me up and off the ground because it was new to me. And so the best one that I found, and I think it was like through B&H Audio, but they had one with some Rode. It was kind of a mix of Rode equipment and then also Zoom podcast stuff. So we started out with a Rode Podcaster 2 for our mixer. Still use that today. That's what I'm talking to you on right now. And I'll use that for the majority of our episodes. And then I've got Zoom mics, headsets, mic stands, stuff like that. We started out with basically a pack that we could do 4 people total. So 4 microphones. Oh, nice. Usually that works pretty good because I'll have myself, our sheriff, chief deputy, and then we'll have an external guest. Sometimes one of them can't make it. Maybe we'll have 2 guests. We had some bigger episodes that we had to get some different equipment. So Zoom makes a PodTrack P8 where you can get up to 6 mic tracks without you can kind of daisy chain all these things together and go really crazy. But if you have more than 6 people in a room, all of a sudden it kind of starts to get hard for the listener to figure out who the heck's talking. So that's about the max that we'll do. So I'd say we maybe use that on 10, 15% of our episodes, but usually it's 4 people or less in a room, and we're using the Rodecaster Pro 2.
And that's where video will help play if you do a large group. I've done a couple of online ones with 6 people, and it definitely helped because then I just could play with the camera and have the camera stay on that person who's talking.
Yeah.
All right, so what changes have you made to the format or the structure since you started it?
The more stuff changes, the more it stays the same. I would say that the overall flow and format, from our first episode all the way to our latest one, are the structure and the bones are pretty similar. I mean, we're usually trying just like we're talking today, we try to start out with a little bit of background, let our viewers know who our guest is, where they came from, and then we'll dive into whatever topic that we're talking about. And so by and large, that's changed the same. I'd say we've kind of honed and refined that, polished it out a little bit, as we've been going. We started in March of 23, so we're about a year and a half into this now. And so we're trying to just smooth out, some of the rough edges. We don't script our stuff. We do an outline. Yeah. Sorry, and I'm jumping ahead maybe on you too. So we authenticity is key for us. So we want to have I keep going back to that cup of coffee conversation type of concept. And I know there's different podcasts that do stuff different ways. That's the beautiful thing about podcasts. You can make your podcast however you want. But for us, we wanted it to be authentic. So I have over the years made the mistake of overproducing stuff for my boss. And when you do scripts and if you're doing stuff that you want to maybe record a video or something, and you can just tell when it comes off, okay, they're reading that, like that's not really what they think. And so we really try to just have, kind of an episode outline, some bullet points. We might have a pre-scripted question, at least so somebody can kind of formulate an answer and talk intelligently about a subject. But I really try to stay away from the scripted stuff, because you can smell that from a mile away when somebody's just reading.
And now, a word from our sponsor. In today's climate, you need to be able to communicate, whether you're communicating to those who serve, your peers, or your constituents. Whether you're looking for professional development or to work with a professional, John Guilfoyle Public Relations has you covered. From crisis communications to website development, visit our website at jgpr.net or call us directly at 617-993-0003 to get started today. We'll help you tell your story strategically. Now let's return back to our episode.
Do you plan out your podcasts over a stretch of time? I mean, what's coming up in the next few weeks.
Yeah. Yes. And then sometimes no. It really depends on my time. So like for the first year, we were really diligent on getting an episode out a week. Sometimes we would record a few ahead if we had something coming up, and then, we'd be able to release them out. Back in January, I switched roles. So I'm going to wander off into the woods. So stop me here, Robert, but we're a 125 person agency, and we do not have a full-time PIO staff as some would describe it. We're hoping to, again, like I said, this fall, but we're kind of a mid-sized high school. Sometimes the quarterback still has to march with the band at halftime. So if I'm making that analogy, so it really kind of depends on. It depends on the time I've got available. I moved to our patrol division, so I'm in less of an administrative role, full-time operations now, and so the biggest struggle that I've had with this now isn't that I love doing the podcast. The podcast is the fun part. Even editing isn't too bad because the technology is super easy today, but it's the time to plan episodes, schedule episodes, and just do some of that kind of administrative management that has been the hard part for time. So we've never run out of stuff to talk about. We never run out of ideas, but it's just getting everything lined up. As doing a podcast, sometimes that takes a lot of energy and juice.
Yes. It's funny that you brought up that analogy about the quarterback going into the band during halftime. My uncle was a high school football coach in Southern Illinois, small town.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about the other day that I would go to these games and he would yell at the quarterback and all his linemen because they were all in the band during halftime. They never got the rest. It just was one of those funny things. And you bring that up and it's like, wow, it just brings a whole memory back, which is awesome.
Yeah. No, it's unfortunately I've been able to use that one in more things than just podcasting. So it's everybody in public safety knows. I mean, it's all hands on deck, across the board. Sometimes you just got to pick up the ball and go. So,
yep. You're using Riverside. So are you using the full paid version, or are you using the medium range one?
Just because it's new, I'm starting out with the lower tier, so I haven't paid the for the full premium one yet. But I kind of wanted to see what we had available to us when Spotify went away from their own in-house editor. We were kind of waiting to see where we were going to go next. Were we going to go to Buzzsprout or something else like that? So far, I've been happy with Riverside. Like I said, I'm a little slower with it than I'd like to be. But as I'm picking up, a little bit from it, we're just evaluating if it's something we want to put a little bit of extra money into.
Yeah, I haven't jumped to that final level. I keep saying I'm going to.
Yeah.
And I keep saying, yeah, I'm putting the money somewhere else because this is all out of my pocket.
Yep.
I barely make. Sometimes I barely make enough to cover the cost of the hosting.
No, I get it. Well, and whether you're on the private side or me, I'm looking at taxpayer dollars, so I gotta balance that return on investment. So it's a real thing for everybody.
And they do have some nice features on the high end, the $24 version, but I still don't see the 100% value in it yet. Maybe if I'm starting to make money, I'll do it, but
Well, let me know if you like it, if you try it. So
Yeah, I will.
awesome.
All right. So is there something you would like to implement in the future with the podcast? I know you talked about video, but is there something else?
Yeah, the video is kind of our next frontier, so to speak. And and I think you do this as well. We've already used some limited video stuff to try and do promo stuff just to advertise on social media and different things like that. So I think the biggest thing for us is branching out into other audiences. I mean, that's the main reason that we did the podcast in the first place. We've got a following on Facebook. We've got a following on Twitter or X. We've got a following on Instagram. This was kind of just another outlet into our community where we can maybe catch people that we weren't already communicating with. And so I think video just opens up another opportunity, another avenue to find people. So that's really kind of our next thing that we're looking to implement. But one thing at a time. You can do a lot of things good, but you can only do a few things great. So we're trying to just walk before we run with this stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can only do you can only move so quick. And if you, I found people that have rushed in podcasts have kind of, they get so deep in the weeds with it that it starts to bog down and they lose what their goal is.
Well, and it takes some momentum, right? I mean, there's energy that you have to put into this, and any type of podcast. I mean, you look across the entire Apple podcast library, and I bet you can find as many podcasts that had 10 solid episodes, and then they fell off the map.
Yep.
And that happens with a lot of shows. It happens in entertainment with TV shows and everything else. So it just takes energy and momentum to keep it going. So keep it. That'd be one tip I'd give to anybody listening out there is keep it manageable and keep it something that you can do consistently.
Did you monitor your analytics on your podcast to see the numbers?
We do, and it's one thing that we look at, I guess, but I would say it's not the only thing. So our big goal when we started this was, and it's part of our mission statement. So we're providing exceptional law enforcement services that reduce crime, enhance public safety, and build public trust. So this was the build public trust part of our mission. It's in our strategic plan. We're looking for ways to communicate better with our external stakeholders, but also our internal folks. We have some episodes that are geared primarily just to our people in-house. So I'm not necessarily going to pick up, the sheriff's state of the office message. There's going to be some people in our community that listen to that, but we want people in our own house to hear that too. So those are important. It's kind of cool to see that I've got people listening in Australia or, wherever. And we do, and I'm sure you do on your show too. It's fun to see, that audience grow. But the most important analytic to me is when I'm out on a call or I'm meeting with some business and they say, hey, we heard that episode on the podcast the other day, and being able to have some of the context. I mean, our business is very nuance based, especially when we're talking about difficult topics. It's more than just a 30-second soundbite is going to cover a lot of times. And anybody that's in the public information sphere knows that messaging is very hard. I mean, we go to schools for weeks and years to figure out how to do this stuff better. And so this is just a way that we can provide that messaging through context. And when you get that feedback face to face in the community, I'll take that over, whatever the numbers say on Spotify.
One of the things I've seen with the podcast is you tend to grab sometimes older audiences, the people that used to listen to talk radio now that have made that leap to the technology on their cell phone where they have, the ability to listen to stuff like that.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that's where maybe the video, it will help us kind of dial in maybe a younger generation. We'll see. But I would say if I'm looking specifically at our analytics, our primary audience is probably in that 30, 40s range, some 50s as well. Just kind of a bell curve of the age graph.
Now, have you done any kind of like call to action asking people to submit their ideas for future shows?
Yeah, we do, and we always put out a plug like with our email address and our social media stuff on all of our episodes, and we've gotten some interaction with that. We try to just be listening socially, with all of our stuff, and so sometimes it's maybe not necessarily a direct request for a topic, but we had a big missing person case. It's still ongoing. Happened last November, but it's our most popular episode by far. And there was a gentleman that went missing last November, and that was one where there was just a lot of buzz in the community, made national headlines, made a lot of the national television shows, true crime stuff. And so that was one where we decided, hey, we're the best source of information on this. Everybody can spin this stuff, but yeah, there's certain things that we can't talk about. It's an active investigation, but if we're at a point where we need help from the public, we need tips, we need information, Crime Stoppers, all the things. Well, let's let them know at least a little bit of what we got, and we can at least talk about the timeline so that we can correct some of the stuff that is just wrong out there. And so that's been one of our most popular episodes, and we did that in response to really kind of a public hunger for information on a case.
And you also said that you did some other true crime. Were these like closed or cold case homicides?
Yeah, those were past cases, and those have also been very popular for us. And true crime is a big segment of podcasts in general, and there's a big appetite for that out there. But yeah, those have been some of our other popular episodes that were old cases that have since been cleared. We've made an arrest on them, and in our case, we kind of shared the investigation with the Lincoln Police Department here in town. And one case was kind of primarily theirs, one was ours, but it ended up being the same killer. It was basically a serial killer that was here and ended up killing both victims, unfortunately. But just we try to use that. That's kind of a sub series within our podcast, just to give a voice to those victims and their stories, and just remember their legacy too.
Absolutely. And you know what? And it's a great way to generate leads sometimes.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Captain, what advice would you have for someone who wanted to start their own podcast for their agency?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, set your goals, figure out what are you trying to achieve. And if you're trying to do everything, if you want to go out and say, well, we're just going to be Joe Rogan today. Well, nobody's going to just all of a sudden have a million listeners. And we didn't do this to like monetize anything. I mean, we're a public safety taxpayer funded agency. We did this with the goal of building public trust with our community and giving them another avenue to learn about us, how we do what we do and why we do it. So figure out what you're trying to achieve, I guess, and start there. But you can't be everything to everyone.
When I started this podcast 4 years ago, I started it as a way to stay connected when I retired from law enforcement. It was my way to stay connected to other PIOs. And then the goal was kind of like find another job, which I ended up doing. But it became like a passion because then I finally started talking to other PIOs, and then they're like, oh, could you interview this guy? Every day I get something from somebody. Oh, you want to interview this girl? You want to interview this person?
Yep.
And it's fun. It's fun to hear how everybody's doing different stuff across the country. And yet we all have the same goal. We want to be transparent. We want to connect with our community, and we want to reduce crime.
Yeah. And it's let's be honest. I mean, maybe we are podcast geeks, but it's fun. And if you set yourself up so that you're taking on a manageable task, maybe you don't do a weekly episode. Maybe it's once a month that you're going to do something. But I would encourage anybody that's in the PIO sphere to at least give it a shot, because it's a way to reach out to a different segment of your audience that you may not be connecting with right now.
And I know the PIOs in the field, they rely so heavily on social to connect. Yeah. And it's great, but there's other avenues out there too.
Well, and for me, what you're missing there is you've got that very short attention span, right? You've got the clicks, and you've got the, maybe if you're lucky, 30-second soundbite, maybe more like 7.
Yep.
But this is a way that you can really you can have context behind what you're talking about, and especially maybe it's like in our case, we try to have our sheriff on most of our episodes. He's he's an elected official. He's the head of our agency. I think people want to know what he thinks about these topics. And there's always the concern that, well, maybe am I going to say something? Is this going to come off the right way? Well, if people can't cheat and listen to the podcast and just take pop shots, because if you're gonna commit and listen, you're not going to miss the context.
Has your chief gotten on and talked about anything political while he's been on there?
We try to really keep the politics out of it. It's not a political platform, in that sense of things. So no, we really haven't gone down that road. Now, I mean, obviously he's got his own, personal feelings, and we don't. I mean, we talk openly and honestly about various topics, but no, we've really strayed away from anything that's campaignish. I mean, that's just something that we can't do.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't say campaign. I just meant when executives like to voice their opinion about certain things, like something that may have happened in law enforcement. The one that is sticking in me right now is the shooting that happened in Champaign, Illinois, where the deputy killed the woman that had the pot of boiling water. She was going through a mental health crisis.
Right. Yes, I'm familiar with that case. Yeah. We, we'll talk about current events and things like that. And yeah, I guess I do think at some point, your personal opinions are gonna bleed into everything you do. So there's a part of that. And one episode that we haven't done yet was on our riots back from 2020. There was a lot of agencies across the country that had riots, civil unrest, whatever you want to call it. I'll just call it riots. We had riots here, and so that's one that we're figuring out how to do that one. So there's I think you can talk about it, but there might be some that you just need to be careful and strategic about how you're going to approach an issue, because you want to be informative, you want to be forthright, but you don't want to just maybe alienate an entire section of your audience or of the public that you're working for.
All right, Captain, is there a question I should have asked? And if so, how would you have answered it?
I just really want to make sure that anybody that's listening out there understands that our main reason for doing the podcast is really to be able to sell that why and explain that why. I think it's important for law enforcement and public safety across the board to tell their own stories. And technology like this provides us with the medium to do that directly to the public that we work for. Whereas before we had to wait for a journalist or radio show or somebody to invite us on. We can do this. Like, we can do this today. I could get off this recording with you, and if the sheriff has something to say, we can push it out now. And so
that's
this
awesome.
This is a extremely valuable tool, and I think our public rightly expects information from public safety agencies, and who better to tell our story than us? We just have to make sure that we're coaching ourselves up and taking a stance that we're willing to do it.
Good advice. Thank you. Let's switch to some rapid fire questions. You ready?
Let's go.
I switched them up on you, so look out.
Okay.
Movies or books?
Movies.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Vanilla.
Coffee, tea, or energy drink?
Coffee.
Adult
Black.
drink of choice?
Rye whiskey old fashions.
Nice. If you could become an expert in something, what would it be?
Podcasting. I'm definitely not there yet.
You'll get there. You're well on your way. Ask permission or beg for forgiveness?
I'm a recovering permissionaholic. I'm trying to get better at that, but yeah.
What is one thing on your bucket list you'd like to achieve?
I've got 4 kids at home, and I'm just really looking forward to them getting launched safely and successfully and out into becoming productive members of society. So I'm gonna start there with the important ones, and if there's some other stuff left over for me, I'll take it.
I have 3 kids in their 20s. They have all been successful. So
congratulations.
I completely understand.
That's a mission in itself, right there.
It absolutely is. And they're great kids. They all. And one serves in the Coast Guard, one's a reporter, and one's in corporate.
Awesome.
If you could have coffee with any historical figure, living or dead, who would it be?
Jesus.
Interesting conversation that would be.
Thomas Rhett wrote a song. I don't know if you listen to country music, but he wrote a song called "If I Could Have a Beer with Jesus," and just really cool if you think about that. So, absolutely. Yeah. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received? Not to take myself too seriously, and I think we all have a tendency to do that from time to time. But I think my kids taught me that more than anything. That it's sometimes you just got to sit back and laugh a little bit too.
Laughter is such a powerful reformer for your soul. It really is.
Yeah.
When you're stressed. Final thoughts. What key points would you like our listeners to take from today's interview?
I think really just that idea that context is key, and everything that we do information wise, and being able to communicate the context that we do that is key. Podcasting is tailor made for that type of work, and we work in a very nuanced business in public safety.
Absolutely. As you wrap this up, is there a piece of wisdom or a motto that you live by?
This goes back to my military days, but it works for the military, works for public safety, works for telling my kids to pick up their room. But I go back to a good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow.
Excellent. Captain, how can people best reach out to you if they want to connect, learn more about the podcast?
Yeah, so the podcast is the 902 podcast, and we are on Spotify, Apple, wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts. So happy to throw that out there, and please check us out. And I'm happy to share tips on what I've learned and maybe what we've learned the hard way, and we can help you do better. But I'm on LinkedIn, just John Vik, JohnVik, and you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm also on X. It's LSOCAPTVIK, so LSO Captain Vic on X. And you can also find just information about my agency at joinlso.com. And like I said, I know you have a lot of PIOs that listen to your show, Robert. We are going to have a civilian PIO full-time position be opening up probably later this fall. We're working out some details with HR, but we're really looking forward to bringing somebody on board that can devote the full-time attention that this work needs.
Awesome. And you know what? Send me that info once you have it, and I'll put it out to the people that I know that potentially might be interested.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Captain John Vik, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, and just good luck to everybody out there. Stay safe.
That's all for this week. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified on the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows you to leave a review, please give us a review. Any review is appreciated. To support our efforts with the PIO podcast, you can click on the support button in the show notes, and any donation is appreciated. Thank you.